this is one of the reasons Hardback Black Model, he doesn't want to admit it very loud, but he was right behind the bill that forced the state of Illinois to check DNA. I mean, are you going to, anyone of you believe that we have to go forcefully after all closed cases where there's DNA evidence? I mean, I think there's a huge, this demonstrates that there's a huge percentage of people in jail that are innocent, period.
I'll just follow up on that. That was the most commonly question to me from younger Missoula County Dems was about Berry Beach. And I just thought we were running out of time, but I guess since you brought it up, that was one of the most commonly emailed questions. And apparently the Innocence Project is starting in the state of Montana. So I guess just to follow up, and I think we're now at Mr. Bullock's turn.
Do I think that we need to do DNA?
So it's
a review of all DNA?
Yes.
No. I think, well, I think that for that DNA that was reviewed and it ultimately went to trial, other than this Malenkoff character, because you had one rogue actor for quite a while in the crime lab, and Mike.
Illinois, there was no rogue actors.
Well, I'm saying at least what I know of that hadn't occurred in Montana.
I'm not talking about what happened in Montana. I'm talking about what happened in Illinois. In the state of Illinois, they had legislation that said they had to go look at certain cases of DNA evidence. Over 30% of those cases they reviewed were found that people were innocent. These were basically, I'm not sure if it was the outright sexual abuse, the rape cases, but this is 30% of all convictions of rape convictions were found that had DNA evidence still around were found to be innocent.
So the DNA wasn't earlier tested?
Right. I'm talking about old DNA.
Gotcha. I apologize. I thought that you were speaking of DNA tests that might have been otherwise corrupted. To the extent that, no, I don't think that would be a bad idea if there was funding to turn around and say, if there is actually DNA that was never tested, the availability to do that. That's ultimately, I mean, unfortunately right now, we're not even funding our crime lab enough to handle what goes on. So be it Missoula or Billings, they're shipping all their DNA evidence, or they're not doing the DNA. I mean, Billings, Yellowstone County spends thousands and thousands of local dollars because they can't get anything out of our own state crime lab here that the Attorney General oversees. So I don't think that would be a bad idea. I think that ultimately to get the legislature to buy it when we're not even funding the crime lab that we have could be an uphill battle.
I mean, I would not support a wholesale reopening of old cases. There is a statutory scheme for post-conviction relief, and other statutes that in a claim of actual innocence do allow for the kind of proceedings to review it. I know that Attorney General McGrath has reviewed a number of old cases, particularly that related to Mr. Malenkoff's claim. But those I don't think were DNA. I think those were trace evidence where he was making unfounded scientific conclusions about the likelihood that a hair sample belonged to somebody, and basically pulling some stats out of thin air that weren't validated by scientific testing. But I know, I've talked to Mike McGrath about this a lot. They've had a very thoroughgoing review. I would certainly insist on a thoroughgoing internal review to make sure the standards are up to par, but I would not support wholesale review of those cases because there is a set statutory scheme. And we've got to remember, criminal cases rarely turn on one isolated piece of scientific evidence. There's inferences drawn about where a suspect was located. There's often an admission. I mean, there's a whole universe of evidence in addition to the scientific piece. So we've got to go through that analysis. We're going to talk about the possibility of overturning prior convictions. I mean, out of respect for the crime victims, defendants are afforded right to counsel in many other matters. So I think there's things the Attorney General can do internally and should do, and that I would commit to doing, to ensure the scientific claims made by my staff are valid, but I wouldn't support really just a wholesale starting clean on a whole range of cases. And I'm not sure that's what you're suggesting. I think it's important to draw those distinctions.
And Mr. B.
I think the worst thing we can do in our society is to leave a person in prison who has been convicted of a crime for which he or she did not commit. Now, I agree with what Steve and John are saying, that I don't think I would do a wholesale, I'm going to go and review every case that's out there. But I think I would be open to allowing people who wanted to challenge the evidence beyond the post-conviction relief, to giving them some ability to do that. And so I think I would be open to doing it. And as far as the Berry Beach case is concerned, I've stated to other people, and I'll tell you now, if I'm the Attorney General, I will at the very least, undertake an independent review of the file just to make sure. Because I think any time when you have a case in our system that gets the kind of review that we got on Dateline or whatever that darn show was, we at least ought to take a look at it. Because in a constitutional democracy, the worst thing we can do is put an innocent person in jail for a crime they didn't commit.
Mr. Tate, do you have a question?
I do.
All right.
Well, thank you guys for showing up. I think we're really lucky to have 3 outstanding